like to welcome everybody to our webinar this afternoon. My name is Anna Christie. I'm the Chief Executive of the Sussex Chamber. So every business has faced many challenges the last few months, whether it's reduced income, no income, or furloughing staff. And there have been some businesses that have actually seen an upturn that, additional work, especially like maybe technology, IT, website development companies. But the tourism and leisure sectors are two of the most impacted. There are other sectors, but these two are the most impacted by COVID-19, especially the length of time it's going to take to return to whatever a new normal looks like. So the Chamber Network, through the British Chambers, we have been lobbying extensively the last few months to ensure that businesses receive the support where it is really needed. There are still gaps to be filled, and there's going to be a lot of support that is required over the coming months, especially with the various schemes coming to an end. Some of the initiatives in terms of the tourism sectors that the British Chambers have been lobbying for are the review of the public health measures at borders, as well as the instatement of travel corridors, to name a few. So today we are joined by Alison Addy, who is the Head of Community Engagement at Gatwick Airport. So Alison has been with the Gatwick Airport for over 25 years in different departments such as planning, airport development, stakeholder engagement. Since 2016, she's led the airport's community engagement and investment programme, including working with local businesses and economic partners to help ensure that the benefits are felt across the region. So I'd like to welcome Alison, who's going to provide us with an overview about how Gatwick Airport have been coping, and also what they're doing, what measures they're taking to ensure that everyone can travel, whether it's for business or for leisure, safely and keep healthy. Alison.
Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you for that lovely introduction. So good afternoon, everybody. Before I go on to my slides, actually something I think is really important to sort of recognise is the really, really important role of the Sussex Chamber of Commerce and the role they've taken and how hard the team have worked over the last few months. Gatwick have had a really long and valued relationship with Sussex Chamber, and I have to say, over the last few months, that we've really felt the strength of that relationship in how hard Anna in particular has worked to make sure that in the lobbying that Sussex Chamber and through the British Chamber of Commerce lobbying government, that our sort of needs as a business have been represented alongside the needs of obviously the wider business community. So I think it's really important to recognise that hard work and that we all as members benefit from. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Alison. Thank you.
So on to sharing my screen. So let me just bring up the slideshow, which looks like it's working fine. So I'm going to aim to give you an update about Gatwick. I'll touch on obviously a bit of a summary around the impact, where we are currently, and then particularly, as Anna said, some of the measures we're taking in order to really help everybody keep healthy, keep safe and keep flying, and really build consumer confidence and work with our airline partners to really get Gatwick moving again. So if I just start with this slide. So I was reflecting on the fact that if I had been doing one of these Gatwick updates just a few months ago, I would most likely have used this slide as an introduction, because this describes to you Gatwick's role as a vital piece of national infrastructure, and the sort of the performance data that we had just a few months ago. So over 46 million passengers, over 60 long-haul routes, serving 230 global destinations, which was actually more than any other UK airport, and that was to around 72, 73 countries around the world. And then you can also see obviously the contribution that we make in terms of bringing overseas visitors to the UK, and supporting the visitor economy and the jobs and the wider trade contribution. So what we have to bear in mind is that's where we were pre-pandemic. We will return to that position again, but as Anna said in her introduction, it might take some time, and we're currently forecasting that might take up to 4 years. But I think it's important that we do bear this in mind, that we will return and recover. So just to summarise the impact, I'm hoping, because most of you are sitting in front of a computer screen, you can sort of peer into this picture. And the reason I use it was taken a few weeks ago, and it quite starkly shows that, if you'll notice, all of the aircraft stands are full, and all of the long stay car parking spaces, which are to the west of the runway and the southeast of the runway, if you can see those big grey sort of areas, there are no cars in the long stay car park. So it really summarises the fact that we had no passengers. And as you might imagine, in terms of our income, passenger parking and passenger spend in the terminals is a very important income stream to us, alongside obviously the aircraft and passenger charges. So that's just a quick illustration, but actually what is really stark is if you then start to look at the numbers. So this illustrates the impact on passenger numbers over the last few months, and comparing the blue line, which is 2019, to what we've seen in 2020, and that's monthly passenger volumes in millions. So just to explain the scale. So it really has been unprecedented and dramatic, and you'll have seen a lot of that references to this in the media as well. But just to express it from a personal point of view, and also, if Stuart was here on this call, this webinar as well, we've never seen anything like this before. And if you take the examples of say 9/11 or the volcanic ash cloud, in both of those examples, it actually was just a matter of days or weeks, and then we were back up and running, and things were back to normal. We're not in that situation this time around. We're actually really proud that throughout this period we have remained open. So the airport has never actually closed. Right back in March, when obviously you could see that the passenger numbers were falling very rapidly, we did take some very swift decisions to protect the business in the longer term. So, for example, we initially closed North Terminal and restricted our runway operations to just part of the day, because that's all about obviously reducing our operating costs. We also very quickly introduced, we had a consultation across the Gatwick Airport Limited organisation, and as a result of that introduced a voluntary severance scheme, which is actually now run twice, because it ran again more recently. As a result of that voluntary severance scheme, and also taking action to, for example, end any sort of fixed term contracts that we could, or temporary contracts, we've actually seen 720 colleagues leave the business over the last few months. So we had around over 3,000 staff, 3,200 staff pre-pandemic. We're now at about 2,500. So as an organisation, that's had a huge impact. Then in April, the government introduced the job protection scheme. So we were able to furlough a large proportion of our staff. So initially we furloughed over 90% of staff, because as you can imagine, as an airport, the majority of our employees, their roles are passenger sensitive. So without that activity, we just needed to protect their jobs and to see us through this period. And then the other significant action that we took was around pausing the capital investment programme as well. So just as a comparison, We would have been looking at spending around £500 million over the next 2 years. Currently, that's looking at more like 150 to 170 million over that 2-year period. We've already spent about 70 million of that, and the focus is we're only really doing the stuff that's needed for sort of safety and security of the airport. Everything else has had to be paused, but I'll come back to the investment picture a little bit later on. What it is really important to now move on to is the fact that that is a very stark picture and quite depressing, but we are starting to see some green shoots now, and so I'll now move on just to give you a little bit of an update on the current picture around the airlines that are operating. So we were really pleased in mid-June to reopen North Terminal as EasyJet resumed their flying programme. We've got certain airlines that have actually flown all the way through lockdown, so Ryanair and Belavia, who've continued flying. Belavia in particular, they were bringing in agricultural workers and fruit pickers, and that's been a steady stream of people flying through the airport for that work in the UK, and Ryanair obviously flying over to Dublin. But also throughout the lockdown, we have been able to, and this is where we're really pleased that we're able to remain open, we've been able to support and facilitate repatriations, which are actually continuing. So we do still have a few repatriation flights operating through the airport, and also cargo. So cargo flights bringing in humanitarian and NHS PPE supplies, for example, as well as fresh produce as well. So that's been really important. And again, as I say, we're really pleased that we were able to maintain those services. What we have seen is that, you know, the airlines have really been trying to sort of bring forward their services, and we've been really pleased to work with all of our existing airlines to help facilitate them bringing services back on stream. And there are some where actually it's been brought forward much more quickly than we were expecting. So, for example, Norwegian, who we didn't expect to see back at Gatwick until next year because they had to go through quite a serious restructuring. But they're now flying to Oslo and Copenhagen. We were really pleased to see TUI come back. They started operating again on the 12th of July with their flight to Ibiza, and they're building up their programme quite quickly as well. And as you'll see, and I know there's been a huge amount of speculation about British Airways, that British Airways have actually now restarted their long-haul services to the Caribbean. We've yet to see what the outcome will be on short-haul services. I know there's been a lot of speculation on that, but we do hope that they'll be returning short-haul services to Gatwick later in the year. That's yet to be confirmed. So what's been really important in being able to enable this picture, sorry, my light keeps on drifting downwards, is that the lifting of the quarantine restrictions by the government has been really important in this, because those quarantine restrictions had a huge impact on us being able to recover the business quickly. And we're really pleased to see that with the exemptions that have now been put in place for the travel corridors between the UK and countries, we're now able to serve just over around 75% of our destinations that we would have been serving next year. So that's a really encouraging picture for us. Obviously the frequencies aren't quite there yet, but that's what we're trying to build up. So just moving on to destinations, just to give you a quick feel for this, we're now serving 41 destinations in 22 countries. And this is a picture that's changing constantly. So this is the picture as it is today. Tomorrow I could do a presentation and I'll have the news that another airline's bringing another service. So it's great to see that this is building so quickly. But as you can see on the short haul front, we've got a number of airlines serving some of the very popular holiday destinations. Unfortunately, Portugal is not yet on the exemption list for the travel corridor quarantine exemptions. So we're working really hard to try and see how that can be lifted, because for us, Portugal would traditionally be about, over 2 million passengers we'd be seeing with leisure traffic to Portugal. Then you can see we've got also Ryanair, Norwegian, Air Baltic and Wizz Air serving a number of destinations across Ireland, Scandinavia and Eastern Europe. So on the long haul front, obviously that's going to take a bit longer to establish, but we've got, as I say, British Airways flying to Barbados, and they're now bringing on their other Caribbean flights as well. And coming soon, we've got Air Transat and WestJet resuming services to Canada, and also Emirates to Dubai. And they're all yet to be finally confirmed, but we're expecting those in the next weeks, a matter of weeks rather than months. So that just gives you a feel. I did this just really to give you a little bit of a teaser, because actually one of the things we really need is for, obviously, people to start travelling again. So it was very much just to make you think about where would I actually like to go to. So we've got some pictures there of Mallorca, Dublin, we've got Nice, Barbados, Turkey. For me, that's just quite a nice way just to start to think about what you might want to do in terms of travel. The Department for Transport have been undertaking a regular sort of travel opinion survey, and in their latest results, they reported that around 46% of people had got travel bookings in the next 12 months, mainly leisure. And what's noticeable was that they were reporting that only 6% were likely to be business travel, and actually a lot of business travel reported to be most likely would be cancelled in that period. But actually, as an airport, I think we have to be quite upfront and proud about the fact that a lot of the services that we provide is about connecting people with friends and family and giving them the opportunity to reach leisure destinations, and we shouldn't be ashamed of that. Business travel had grown at the airport, and we were looking at probably sort of 1 in 5 travellers being business travellers across our route network. And that will, I'm sure, build again, but I know there's a lot of discussion happening at the moment with businesses around, now that we've learned to live in a virtual world, whether business travel will take the same shape that it did in the past. And what I should also say at this point actually is that, and I've discussed this with quite a large number of people, is we do understand that, travel is a very personal decision at the moment, and that everybody will need to think about their own personal circumstances, be that financial, health, and confidence just around the fact that it's travelling in a continuing COVID-19 sort of travelling world. So we do recognise that, and that's why our focus has been to make sure that we're taking all of the steps and actions on airport to make passengers feel confident about travelling through Gatwick. So I'll just share a few of those with you now. So our focus here has been, in terms of the measures on airport, has been very much around protecting each other. So that's through wearing a face covering, and we do currently encourage passengers to wear a face covering, although we can't mandate it because government haven't yet made it policy, although we think that might change quite soon. But we do mandate all staff have to wear a face covering in public areas. Maintaining social distancing, washing your hands regularly, keeping your hands clean on the go. So all of our measures across the airport have been designed to support this, and we've got a huge amount of signage across the airport as well. We encourage passengers to check the website before they travel, because that's where we'll be providing the most up-to-date information, and we'll have much more detail around what we've put in place. So we've got enhanced cleaning regimes, we've got perspex screens where there's face-to-face contact needed. We have over 200 hand sanitising stations across the airport, as well as, for example, special treatment on the security trays that you have to put your personal belongings into to make sure that they're protected in terms of viral protection. So a huge number of measures, and I would stress, you know, if you speak to other people, do use our website as a point of reference. Follow us on our other digital channels. So I put some links here to obviously our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn pages, because this is where we're sharing the latest information about destinations, airlines, and also the health and safety measures that we're taking on airport. So investment continues. So just on looking ahead, and also some of the progress that's been made in the last few months. This is a picture of the Gatwick train station with 2 green lines across it, which I will get corrected. But the project that had started for the full redevelopment of the Gatwick train station by Network Rail has actually been able to make really good progress throughout the lockdown period, obviously helped by the fact that we had very, very few passengers. And actually, just to give you a comparison, in June, if you compare June 2019, when we had sort of just over 4 million passengers in the month, in June this year, we would have served 29,000 passengers across the whole month. So day by day, actually, the airport's been a very quiet place, which means that, you know, construction projects like Network Rails have been able to progress really well. With our investment commitment to that project has continued, as alongside Coast Capital are also partners in the project. And that, I think, will be a really important project if you're talking about future recovery of the local economy and of the region. Actually, to have that new station facility coming on stream over the next few years will be really, really important. So in terms of business recovery more broadly, I thought I'd just share our key asks that we've been focusing on over the last few months, and actually that Anna has also been supporting on in through the British Chamber as well, because it just gives you a feel for our priorities in terms of business recovery. So we've really depended on the job protection scheme over the last few months. And so we're asking government to extend the furlough scheme for the aviation sector until April 21 to ensure that jobs are protected in airports and airlines across the country. A big issue for us is the slot allocation rules at airports. So normally an airline would have a number of slots at the airport. If they don't use them, they would lose them effectively. So hence the use it or lose it rules. As a result of lockdown, the government actually waived that rule so that aircraft weren't being penalised, or airlines weren't being penalised during that period. And there's a huge amount of lobbying across the industry at the moment to see whether we can actually revert to the use it or lose it without wanting to undermine business recovery for those airlines. But actually for Gatwick and our asset, which is the main, you know, we've got a single runway, is that we need to be able to use those slots for active operations. So for example, if we've got an airline that that's already operating out of Gatwick that wants to expand its operation, or attracting new airlines into the airport as well. Obviously, I've already mentioned the quarantine exemptions on a country by country basis, which has been really important for us, and we want to see that continue, and seeing a very quick responsiveness from the government in terms of reviewing and updating those as much as possible. Another area that we've been lobbying on is on business rate exemptions. Now, to be clear, this isn't about us wanting to undermine Crawley's ability to meet its own commitments, but this is very much about government putting in the measures that have been put out in place elsewhere to give that relief to those local authorities and some of the businesses that are struggling in those areas in terms of the rate collection. And then finally, a number of different areas that come under the regulatory charges through the civil aviation and other bodies as well. So that's just a quick summary on those areas. But I mean, overall, just in summary, I think hopefully what you've seen is that the impact of the pandemic has been particularly severe and devastating at the airport. But we are seeing some really strong signs of recovery. I'd say sort of caution around those numbers in that passenger volumes are still very low, but we are seeing them increase. So, for example, over the last few weeks in July, we are now seeing load factors, so the numbers of passengers per flight, averaging at about just over 50% now, which is much stronger. We were at about 30% for some time. So that is really encouraging, but we know that it will be a slow process. And in terms of our overall, thinking back to that first slide around economic contribution, I think the most important way that Gatwick can support the kick-starting of the local economy and the regional economy and supporting local businesses is for us to put all of our effort into getting Gatwick moving again and working with the airline partners to bring forward those services. But we do have to be realistic that ultimately we're in a bit volatile situation and it does constantly change. So we just continue to work with everybody to make that happen. But you know, we will continue to just keep focusing on keeping everybody that is at the airport, be that staff or passengers, keeping them healthy, keeping them safe, and encouraging everybody to keep flying. And now I'll open up for some questions.
Right, so let's go through the chat. I can see somebody was asking about Cathay Pacific returning, but I believe Jeremy's already answered this. I think they're returning from beginning of September. That's correct? For Cathay Pacific.
Yeah, they're selling on the website direct from the 1st of September, once a day.
Yeah. I haven't got them on my list yet, but I'm sure they'll be. We're going a few weeks at a time in terms of our listings. So yeah, we look forward to welcoming them back to the airport.
I know you mentioned business, as in 115 travellers are business travellers. I think we're likely to see that there may be more, I suppose, anxiety from businesses in terms of travelling, because they're trying to get their staff back into the workplace and then having to carry out further risks in terms of risk assessment, should I say, in terms of them having to travel to another country and the processes involved and them coming back. I think, if anything, we're likely to see more of the leisure tourism take off first rather than business.
Absolutely, yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think the DFT survey reflects that as well. And this is where I think we have to be realistic, but also about be really honest about what the airport is there to do, and something that I had reflected on quite early on in lockdown is, as you said, Anna, I've worked at the airport for over 25 years, and you start to take things for granted, I think, and it really, as everything came to a standstill, it really made me understand what we're here to do, which is to connect people around the world, and particularly connect people with friends and families, and with the opportunities to have holidays and explore the world. And I think for many years we struggled with a reputation as being a sort of bucket and spade airport, and I think we left that reputation behind quite a long time ago. But as a result, we've always been seemed to be a bit nervous talking about being a leisure airport. But actually, even if you looked at Heathrow, and I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but Heathrow obviously traditionally has been a much more significant business-based airport in terms of business travel. But the majority of Heathrow's traffic is still leisure traffic, and that's what we're primarily there to do. So I'm not too concerned around the business travel side of things. Although what will be interesting to see is what that means in terms of international trade in particular.
I think as well, when it comes to leisure travel, we'll just have to see how people react and behave, because we've already seen various individuals going on holiday to certain destinations, and then those destinations already closing down because the social distancing hasn't been there, or things have just got out of control. So I think that's the other biggest concern with the various, like the restaurants and the pubs and places like that opening up, that social distancing tends to disappear after people are relaxed, they're having a few drinks and everything, and that could hamper a lot of the sectors, a lot of the industries.
Yeah, and that's what we recognise, is that it is a very volatile situation, and it's a very personal decision around feeling able to travel at the moment. So I think that inevitably will mean that it's a slower recovery process.
Yeah, I know that Jeremy's just put something on here about businesses will be reluctant to travel, but hopefully when exhibitions and trade events start, they will return. I know that at the moment we can't do exhibitions or expos or anything until I think it's about October time. So hopefully from the end of, really from autumn, winter, we can start to look at that business travel expanding again. I can see Claire's put a question here in terms of what percentage of usual flights would be to destinations which have currently closed their borders of usual flights. So
I don't know the specific answer to those that have closed their borders. I know that there's probably about, for Gatwick, about 25% that currently require quarantine if you were arriving back in the UK. But I don't know the percentage in terms of those that have actually closed borders. I think it's relatively small, actually, in terms of closed borders. But again, it does change very quickly. Just to take the example, my son was going to be flying to Barcelona, which is now in lockdown again. So he's now switching his plans to make sure they can work around that. But so you just got to be prepared to work with it, I suppose.
You do. And I know that Galicia, where I normally go in Spain, is in lockdown as well.
Okay.
I can see Tim has his hand up. Would you like to come in, Tim?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Alison, thank you very much indeed. Really interesting. Must be very stressful times for you and your colleagues. Just for interest, in Eastbourne, while the Beacon Shopping Centre has opened up, and for those of you not used to its new name, it was the Arndale, it's now the Beacon, and numbers are very, very good. Lots of people coming into it. Interestingly, one of the cafes, which is very, very popular with the, let's say, more mature audience in the town, is empty, and they're going to close. And I was just wondering, Alison, is that sort of similar in terms of the demographics of people flying at the moment? Is it tending to be younger people who have more confidence than the perhaps slightly more mature people?
I haven't seen a breakdown. I think that's most likely, given that older people were put in a higher risk category in terms of coronavirus. Normally, we would see that profile of passenger more after the school holidays. So in the autumn, that's when that market would really sort of take off, because they will avoid the school holidays. So at the moment, what we're seeing is, as you say, younger people and families as well, actually. So our new Chief Operating Officer was talking about being on airport over the last couple of days, and talking to a family who were actually sort of congratulating Gatwick on the measures that have been put in place in the airport, and it made them feel much more comfortable in travelling through. But but it'd be interesting to look at the numbers, though. I'll have to have a look at that.
Thank you.
And actually, I should have added, so I mentioned that we reopened North Terminal. Some of the retailers are now reopening as well, which is really, really good news. So duty free is now open. The Red Lion pub airside is open, alongside Pret a Manger, WH Smith, Boots, and a few others as well. So it's as passenger numbers increase, the retailers are able to start resuming their operations as well, which is good news.
That's really good news to hear. You gave us an overview of the station development, which is really good to see that they've been able to carry on with their development during the quiet period. Are you able to comment at all on what the situation is with the standby runway?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, I'd intended to mention that when I was talking about the station. So I don't know whether you're all aware, but we were planning on doing a public consultation on our plans for bringing the Northern Runway into routine use for departures. And that was planned for virtually when lockdown was happening. So unfortunately, that project, we've had to put that on hold, or just pause it basically during this period, because it hasn't been either safe or practical to move forward. But we are continuing with that project, and we plan to bring forward the consultation next year in 2021. We haven't confirmed the dates yet, obviously, because we just need to see how the situation evolves, but that's currently the plan. And actually, you know, we see that project as a really important part of the recovery process, both for Gatwick in terms of our long-term future and the resilience of our business, because it would obviously give us more operational resilience rather than this reliance on a single runway. But also, if we're talking about the recovery of the local economy and the Gatwick Diamond and broader across Sussex as well, to have that focus of inward investment into the region, and that both in the development of the project and then obviously the construction, and then once we're operating, that'd be a really important way of stimulating that recovery locally and also for the UK as a whole. So we see that as really important, and our shareholders are still very committed to the project.
Brilliant. You mentioned something that earlier in terms of the making the premises secure and everything that you've had to put in place, like all of the hand sanitizers, all of the markings and the wearing face masks and everything. Now, the cost of making premises safe and COVID secure, I don't know how secure premises can be, but this is going to be huge. It's, you know, for a lot of the smaller businesses, it's and like yourselves, you've had no income at all coming in for the last few months, and then having to make premises secure and find that kind of funding. One thing that we are lobbying for is for government to provide some grants or funding to help businesses and help yourself, you know, because there's been a huge cost in having to put all of these measures in place with the screens and everything else.
Yeah, and that applies both for us, and this will apply to the businesses around the table as well, not just to our operational areas, but also preparing staff areas, so all of our office space and welfare accommodation, which has all had to be deep cleaned and then set up for social distance working as well. So and providing, making sure that we've got the supplies of masks for our security teams, for example, masks and gloves, and it's I see the daily tracker of making sure that we've got the supplies are all sort of on stream for all of the different requirements that we have. But it is massive, and I can see that for many businesses that's going to be really, really challenging.
Yeah, and it's going to be challenging as well to make sure that we have sufficient supplies, because we saw several months ago about PPE shortage for the NHS and everything. So it's making sure that we have sufficient supplies for business for the foreseeable future, because we can see this is going to be needed for at least 6 months, depending on how the situation develops and everything. Yeah. Any other questions from the audience? Do we have any other questions at all for Alison? No other chat? I think you mentioned about the number of staff that you have on furlough. We've furloughed some staff as well, and I think one of the things that we will see, and it's just worth businesses bearing this in mind, through the Chamber Protect service, which they can help businesses in terms of the HR, legal and tax. HMRC will start to carry out investigations to make sure that all the staff that have been furloughed, we've actually been claiming the right amount. So it's worth businesses bearing that in mind. We do provide that as a service in terms for our Chamber Protect, because this will now be the next phase in terms of HMRC then starting to make sure that businesses were not claiming unnecessary amounts for furloughed staff, and making sure that they were actually furloughed. And so there will be processes put in place by HMRC. But over the next few months, as the furlough scheme ends, and we're trying to lobby for certain sectors like yourselves that it is extended, we will see other schemes coming to an end, like loans and other schemes. So it's making sure that government still provides that support that's needed, because it will take months, if not years, for some sectors to really recover and come out of this, and to really recover for, for the economy to recover as well. So I just wanted to also take this opportunity just to let people know that whilst you have got staff on furlough, there is an opportunity. You can still develop their skills, put them on training courses. We have partnered up with East Sussex College Group, and they're providing fully funded qualification courses. More information will be coming through on our website in the next week, and these will be free for everybody, not just members. It will be free for everybody. So we want to make sure people are taking the opportunity to really develop their skills, because there could be, whether there's going to be restructures or redundancies and reskilling, there will be a need to, and people that have been on furlough for quite a period of time, to reskill them or upskill them. So please do keep an eye on our website and e-newsletters for further information on that. Did you have any final comments or thoughts or anything that you'd like to add, Alison?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, it just really just I was looking around the room Zoom in terms of the people that are on the call today, and just thinking about the fact that each of you you'll have faced, your own business challenges and personal challenges as well during this period. So really, I just, as we continue to move through this, I wish everybody the very, very best, and hope you continue to keep healthy and safe through this period, because I think as we come together and support each other as businesses, even if it's only through networking and sharing information, I think that's really important to stand alongside each other.
Definitely, and we will continue to support business and lobby, and just make sure that businesses are making most of the Chamber membership and marketing services that we have and other bits and pieces, and continue to look at our webinars. We have got some other webinars next week on the Queen's Awards, as well as got Construction Forum and various others. But thank you so much, Alison, for joining us today and giving us valuable insight into what's happening at Gatwick Airport. And we will continue to support you and all of our business members to make sure that we get the support that you need to recover, and to ensure that people are safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.